Hey, hi everybody. Today I would like to spend a little time to talk about the May 2024 E-Assessment math paper. Um, and as the E-Assessment for this year is nearing, which I believe is next week, so I thought I would like to spend a little time to talk about the May 2012 paper. And I'm going to do this in two different videos just to keep my video shorter. So please do stay tuned for part 2 as well as we complete the first part of this paper. So let's look at the question in question 1. This is basically a circle theorem question. Again, a very popular question. So nothing unpredictable, nothing surprising here. So let's get down to this problem. So angle AOD says that we need to find AOD, which is basically this angle. Let me just get my pen out first. So we're going to find this angle here. Now we know that this is an isosceles triangle, which makes this angle 44. So if I want to find out this angle, I'm going to take 180, subtract 44, subtract 44. So that should give me 92 degrees. Now the next one we're going to be doing finding AOB. Let me just take a different color. So we're going to find this angle, which is DOB. So obviously these two angles are supplementary. So I'm going to take 180, subtract the previous answer that we have, which is 92. So that gives me 88 degrees. Alright, so it looks pretty good. I'm going to put 88 here. And angle DCB, which is this angle here. Obviously it will be the same angle as this, which is 44 degrees because of angles in the same segment. Okay, so angles in the same segment. So please do review your circle theorem. Okay, if you need any help on your circle theorems, or if you want me to prove any of that, just write me a message and I could do another video on this. Okay, alright, let's look at question 1b. It says that use your knowledge of circle theorems and explain why angle ADB is 90 degrees. So this was actually an interactive question where the line segments could actually be drawn in different ways. So for instance, I could actually draw AD to look like this. Alright, and this also creates a right angle triangle. So I'm going to use this little triangle to show you why angle ADB, which is this angle here, is actually 90 degrees. Okay, so maybe what I would do is these two lines should touch the circle. So one way we could do to prove that this angle is 90 degrees, if we look at the line AOB. Okay, so I'm going to use a different color. Now we know that angle A, if it AOB is obviously a straight line, and we know that this obviously creates 180 degrees. Alright, because any angle on a straight line is going to be half a circle, which is a semicircle, which is essentially 180 degrees. So we know that there is a circle theorem that we know that angle at the center is equal to twice the angle at the circumference. Alright, and since this angle is basically 180 degrees, then we know that this angle, which is at the circumference, has to be 180 divided by 2, which gives me 90 degrees. Okay, so there we go. So we just proved that why angle ADB is actually 90 degrees. So that would be question 1b. So I think 1 mark, that's generally quite easy as well. So we're going to move on to question 1c. It says that given AD is 12, so A is obviously, so this would be 12 and BD would be 6. So we need to find what's the length of AB here. So this is technically a Pythagoras theorem question. So this is quite easy. So we know that A squared plus B squared equal to C squared for the Pythagoras. And since AB is generally the hypotenuse, which is basically C, so I'm going to put 12 as my A, B to be my 6. It doesn't really matter. You could put 6 to be A, 12 to be B. That would give me C squared, which is generally like your AB. Okay, so this is 144 plus 36. That gives me C squared. So 180 equal to C squared. So C will be equal to 180. And if I were to simplify the surd, I could write it like this. 36 times 5, that gives me 180. And I separate them, I'm going to get something like that. So this is going to give me 6 root 5, which is basically what the question 1, which is A root B. Okay, so this is a good mix of using the Pythagoras and simplifying of the surds. So please make sure you go revise your surds as well, which is again a very popular question that we usually see in e-assessments. Okay, and let's look at question 1D. It says, hence, we're going to determine the area of the circle. Okay, so, and it's based on the previous part. So we do know that AB, alright, it's going to be 6 root 5. Okay, which is the diameter of the circle. And we know that area of a circle, right, is going to be pi r squared. So if we know that AB, which is the diameter, so we need to first find out what is the radius. And since we know that the radius is basically half the length of the diameter, so I'm going to take 6 root 5 divided by 2 first. So that's going to give me 3 root 5. And since we know that 3 root 5 is the radius, I'm just going to put in this number into the formula. So area is just going to be pi 3 root 5 squared. Okay, and if I simplify this, this is going to be pi. If I take 3 and you square it, that's going to be 9 root 5 and you square it, that gives me 5. So that's going to be 45 pi. But of course you can just simply put it on the calculator. Alright, just to really kind of save you the hassle. And I'm just going to put 45 pi onto the calculator, and that should give me approximately about 141.4 centimeters squared. Okay, so yeah, like it's okay. I think the question looks really good, but of course this question will imply that you get the previous part right. Okay, so let's look at question 2a, which is about Venn diagrams. Oh my goodness, this is again another question that we always see in the e-assessment, which is on Venn diagrams, which is probably connected to probability as well. So let's look at this question. It says that you got 175 people at the show, so you have 64, 21 and 81. So okay, pretty straightforward. You're going to take 175, subtract 64, subtract 21, and you subtract 81 as well. Right, and if you put this all onto the calculator, so that should give me, I believe that should give me 9. Okay, so you should have 9 people for question 2a. So 2b, it says describe K in the context of this problem. So we can say that this basically would be just simply 9 performers only. Okay, but remember, since we're looking at this little section here, right, they do not include the ones who belong to the academy. So we need to say that there are 9 performers only, which excludes the academy students. Okay, so we want to be a little more precise with our answers, because it does not include A, so it must exclude the academy students as well. Alright, So let's look at 2C. It says that one of the performers is selected at random to introduce the show. Determine the probability that the selected performer is an academy student. Now, it says that one of the performers is selected, which means that this is actually a conditional probability question. So because we know that in total we have 21 plus 9 performers, because we have 29 here and we have this 9 here, so we have 30 performers in total. Now, since the question is asking what is the probability that the selected performer is an academy student, which we know that that's 21, and so to find the probability, right, we need to do 21 over 30. Okay, remember, we do not put 175 because the question has given you a condition, which is you selected a performer. So we know that we have 30 performers, so we should put 21 over 30, and we simplify the fraction by dividing both the numerator and the denominator by 3, so that should give me 7 over 10. Okay, so this is a bit of a tricky question, but just make sure you read the question carefully. Question 2D, it says that 3 people are selected at random, and calculate the probability that the 3 people are performers. Now this question, I believe that there will be 2 different ways to get to 2 different answers that will be selected. That will be accepted by the examiners at the IB. Okay, so I'll just show you 2 ways. All right, the most common way is when you choose the 3 people who are performers, and it now says that it will be at the show, so now we have to include all 175 people in this case. Now, but the question, it did not really say that this question is about with replacement or without replacement, so there could be one possible answer where you probably would do something like this. Since we're looking at performers, the 3 people are performers, and we know that there are 30 performers, so we can actually start out by doing 30 times 175, which is the probability of you getting a performer for the first person to be performer, which is obviously 30 out of 175. But if we assume that there is replacement, then we know that the probability will always be the same for the other 2 as well, and we have to multiply the probability because they are all independent events. All right, so this is one possible answer that could be accepted, or another possible answer could be you do 30 over 175, then you do times 29 over 174, which means that we assume that every time you pick one person, there's going to be one person less at the show, which means that this is basically considering that this is without replacement, so we would have 28 over 173. Okay, and you kind of work this out, you should somehow get 4 over 865, something like that. Okay, so this is without replacement, and this is with replacement, so either method is going to be fine. Okay, because the question did not indicate whether if this is with replacement or without replacement, and the marking scheme usually is quite flexible when it comes to these kind of questions, where they will accept multiple solutions if the question is not clear enough. Okay, so they do accept both answers for this paper. All right, let's look at question 3A. Let's look at this one. This is obviously a trigonometry question, which is about finding the height of the lamp, given the angle of elevation, and so on. So we are supposed to find the height of this lamppost, which is this height here. Okay, now we do know that the height of this is 1.6 meters. So technically what I'll do is I'm going to just draw a line here, and I'm going to focus on this right angle triangle here. Okay, And what we're going to do is we're going to find this little length first. We're going to find this length, and I'm going to call this x for now. Okay. And since we know that this is 4 meters, right, this is given to us as 4, then we should technically be able to find x if we use the sine, cosine, or tangent ratio, which is informally we like to call this the SOHCAHTOA. So let's find what x first is. Okay, we know that x, if we divide this by 4, that's going to give me equal to tangent 37 degrees. Okay, and if we want to find x here, in this case, we're going to do 4 multiplied by tangent 37, and I believe that's going to give you something like 3.0142162. Okay, I'm just going to keep all the decimal places for now first. And since we know what x is, then we just have to add on to the height of 1.6 meters. So the height of lamp P is just going to be 3.0142162, and you add 1.6 towards it. So that should give you approximately about 4.6 meters. I'm just going to keep this to one decimal place. You may even ask what is the degree of accuracy that will be used in the e-assessment. Generally, if you use one decimal place, that would be fine. You could even use a higher degree of accuracy, like 2 decimal places. Generally, that will all be accepted. But of course, if the question basically asks for things like correct to the nearest meter, correct to the nearest whole number, then please make sure you follow the instructions. Okay. And let's look at the next question. The next question is pretty interesting. We're supposed to find out what is the height of this building. But this question is interesting is because no angles is basically given. So technically speaking, we are not going to be using any form of trigonometry. But what we could do is there is a concept here that actually may help, which is basically looking at similar triangles. Now let me just show you something first before we get down to this question, is that if I were to draw a triangle like that, okay, and I have a triangle here. Now let's call this A, B, C, D, and E. Now would you agree that triangle ABC is actually similar to triangle CDE? Now let's recap what similar triangles are. Now similar triangles basically means that both triangles have the same shape, but they do not necessarily have the same size. So maybe one size is probably proportional to the other. So in this case, if we look at ABC and CDE, and to ensure that they have the same shape, you must have the same angles for both triangles to prove that both triangles are similar. Now if you look at this, we know that if these two are parallel lines, then angle A is always going to be equal to angle C, angle B is going to be equal to angle D, and of course angle E, they share the same angle. So that's why all 3 angles are the same. So that's why these 2 triangles are similar. Now since we know that these 2 triangles are similar, then what I'm going to do is we're going to use the fact that both are similar, and we're going to look at comparing the ratios of these 2 triangles. Okay, because I said earlier that if 2 triangles are similar, that means they have to be proportional to each other. So maybe if one side is double the other triangle, then the other sides or the corresponding length should also be double of the other. Okay, you see where I'm coming from? Alright, so let's look at this question, and let's just try to put in the numbers here. Okay, we know that AB is generally the height here. I'm going to put this in blue. We know that this length is going to be 3. Then the whole length here is going to be 23 in this case. Okay, because 3 plus 20, that's going to give me 23, assuming that this is going to be the height as well. Okay, so if you look at this triangle, it does look similar, isn't it? the one that we just drew right above here as well. And we do know that the height of the lamp, which is this length here, is what we found earlier, which is 4.6 meters, isn't it? Now, so I'm going to use 4.6 here for this, basically for this length here. Okay, so I think we literally have what we have sufficient information for us to solve the question. Now let's look at this. Okay, now we do know that if we want to compare the ratio of the big triangle to the small one, now so we should be looking at ABC comparing to CDE. Okay, now we know that for AB, oh sorry, I think this should be ABE. Okay, sorry, my apologies, not ABC, it should be ABE. So in this case, since we know that the length of BE is 23 and the length of ED is 3, would you agree that the ratio of the big triangle to the small triangle has to be 23/3? Okay, so I'm going to put big triangle and this would be small triangle. Okay, and that would also be equivalent to the ratio of AB, which is the height of the building, so I'm going to call this H, over 4.6, because this, which is H, these two lengths are proportional. Okay, so we just formulated an equation, and in order for us to find the height, if we could solve this equation, then we should be able to find height. So to find the height, I'll take 23/3 times 4.6. Okay, and if you put this pretty much on the calculator and you round it to the nearest meter, that should give you 35 meters in this case. Okay, so I hope this question somewhat makes sense. I thought this is a very good question. Okay, and it really tests you on your understanding of similar triangles. So please make sure you get some practice on this. Okay, another very good question that usually appears in the E-assessment. All right, now we're going to move on to question 4, which is about functions. Yeah, there's always a functions question in the E-assessment, so we're going to look at this. So it says solve fx equal to gx. So this looks like it will end up being a quadratic equation. So what we're going to do is we're going to make sure that one side of the equation is always going to be 0. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to subtract 1 here, and I'm going to add 3x here. So technically it will look something like this. You have x squared plus x plus 3x minus 4 minus 1. So you're going to get x squared plus 4x minus 5 equal to 0. So there are many ways to go about doing this. You could obviously use the quadratic formula, which is given to you in the formula booklet, or you could try to factorize, which I think is always the more effective way, because it makes your life easier. Quadratic formula is usually quite problematic because students make mistakes for that, but otherwise choose whatever that works for you. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to factorize this, which looks something like that. So I'm going to get x equal to 1 or x equal to -5 for this question. Okay, so yeah, I think 3 marks is in the bag for this one. So let's look at question 4b. Okay, so question 4b is interesting. So it's basically having the previous part of fx, which is looking at fx and gx from the previous part, and you realize that these two graphs actually intersect at 2 points, which is basically essentially what the question is asking you to do in part A. When fx is made to be equal to gx, from a graphical perspective, what it means that both graphs actually do intersect. And since we got two answers here, it means that the two graphs should meet at 2 points, which is obviously illustrated in this graph here, which is at point A and point B. Now, we know that we have two answers for x, which is -5 and 1. So it's quite obvious that for A, this has to be -5, and for B, the x coordinate needs to be 1. Alright, but the question says that we need to find out what is the y coordinates of A and B. Then all we need to do is making sure that we substitute these two numbers into any of these two equations here to find the y value. So what I'll do is to find the y coordinate of A. Okay, I'm going to substitute -5 into any of the two equations. I'm going to choose this one, okay, because it's lots easier. So it's 1 minus 3 times -5. So that gives me 1 plus 15. So that gives me 16. Okay, and the y coordinate of B is just going to be 1 minus 3 times 1, which gives me -2. Okay, so I think this one is pretty straightforward. Another few points in the back as well. Okay, another 3 marks in the back. Alright, now question 5. This is going to be about a parabola, which is about quadratic functions or quadratic graphs. So let's look at what this question entails. Alright, so it says that the board is at a height of 1.5 meters. Again, when its distance from the starting point is L, determine the value of L. So we're going to try to find out what this value is. This is a mark, so it should generally be quite easy. But the biggest clue here is that because if you look at this quadratic graph here, alright, it goes all the way up to the highest point so basically this value here, the x coordinate here, it needs to be 2. This is obviously 0, and since this is a parabola, right, at this point here, this vertex should be at the midpoint of the parabola. So if this is 2, then this has to be 4, right? Because obviously this part is like a little mirror to the first part of the parabola here. So obviously, and since if we know that this is 4, then the distance has to be 4 as well. So L has to be 4. So it's 4 meters. Okay. So usually a 1 mark question generally should be very, very straightforward. Now, the 5 part B asks for the path is represented by the parabola in that equation which is given to you. Show that A is -0.3. Now, if you have this equation given to you, then all we really need to do is just to choose any point given to you on this graph. Alright, obviously you're not going to choose 2 and 2.7, which is the vertex. You may want to choose this point, okay? Because this point, the coordinates is just 0 and 1.5, and you can substitute these points into this equation here. So since this is the x value and this is the y value, I'm going to substitute this into this equation. So it's going to look something like this. So it's 1.5 equal to A, 0 minus 2 squared plus 2.7. Remember, your objective is to find A, so we need to simplify this equation. This is going to give me 4 plus 2.7. So 1.5 equal to 4A plus 2.7. So we're going to get minus 1.2 equal to 4A. So A is just going to be -0.3. Okay, so that really shows how A is given to be -0.3 here. So that's 2 marks in the back for this one. Alright, let's look at 5C. It says that the ball hits the ground at distance D. So obviously it hits the ground here. Find the value of D. So at this point, we agreed, I think one thing we can all agree is that the height here is going to be 0. Now, we do know that the equation given to us was -0.3. x minus 2 squared plus 2.7. So you should make use of this equation given to you in the previous part. Now, if we know that the height is 0, then typically what you're trying to do is we're going to put h of x to be 0 as well, which is like the y value. So if we try to solve this equation, we just need to find what is x here. Okay, what I would typically do is I'm going to make this to be positive, so it's going to look something like this. So it's going to be 0.3 x minus 2 squared equal to 2.7. Okay, I just like to keep things to be positive. Do not try to expand this yet, because we can actually do one very nice little step here. I could do x minus 2 squared equal to 2.7 divided by 0.3. So I'm going to get x minus 2 squared. That gives me this to be 9. Now, there is a square here. I can actually get rid of the square by doing a square root. And if I square root this, I'm just going to remove the square. I'm just going to end up having x minus 2. But remember, for 9, if you take the square root of 9 in an equation, you're going to get two values. You're going to get 3 or negative 3 in this case. But in this case, we don't really need negative 3, because I'll show you why. If we solve this equation and this equation, you're going to get x minus 2 equal to 3 or x minus 2 equal to negative 3. Now, if you solve both equations, this is going to give me 5. This is going to give me negative 1. Now, it's obviously this value has to be a positive number, so we're going to reject this guy. Okay, so x obviously is going to be 5. So in this case, if we want to find out the value of d, which is this entire distance here, so d obviously has to be 5 as well. Okay, so this is a good 4 marks in the bag. So what does this basically tell me? That you need to know how to solve quadratic equations, and you need to be extremely comfortable with it. Okay, so take my advice for this. This will be a good tip if you want to ace your e-assessments. Now, we still got a few questions here, which is question 6, which is a really nice question. And we have another question 7, which is about it's a more like a criterion D question that is linked to the box plots, and question 8, which is obviously our criterion B question. Now, I'll put this all into my next video, because this video is really long, and hopefully it gives you a little time to digest the questions from that we just discussed earlier. Okay, so please stay tuned to my video that will be coming up very soon. But please, if you like this video, please like the video, subscribe to my channel, and spread my channel name to your friends. Okay, and I'll see you very soon. Take care. Bye.